Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the moderator of the next session, Jan Cienski.
Good afternoon, and welcome to what I think will be a really strong panel. We're going to be talking about towards a European Defence Union, if not now, when. My name is Jan Cienski, and I am a senior policy editor at POLITICO Europe, and I'm in charge of our defence policy. So we've got a really good panel today, and we're going to be dealing with the crucial issue of what steps the EU is taking to ramp up its defense spending and its defense production. And this is obviously a response to two ongoing challenges. The first is the threat posed by Russia, shown by the invasion of Ukraine, which is something that's been going on for a decade now. And the second one is the more recent challenge posed by the possible retreat from Europe by the United States under Donald Trump, and how Europe adapts its defense industry and defense posture to that challenge. Before we start with the panel, I'd like to announce a Globsec presentation, A Stronger Europe, Building Defense for Uncertain Times, and it'll be presented by Martin Sklenár, the former Defense Minister of Slovakia and the Director of Defense and Security at Globsec.
Thank you very much, Jan. Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to tell you about the report that we wrote in Globsec about Europe and how it gets stronger for uncertain times, obviously, as you can see from the title. So this is the challenge, right? Europe is at a critical juncture. The environment is very, very challenging, and the urgency is very tangible. There is no doubt that the old ways Europeans have been doing business are not fit for the current environment and for the new situation. This is a different world than it was 5 years ago. It's different from 1 year ago, and as of this morning, it's also different from yesterday, I would say. Organizing defense is therefore making its way to the European level, where we feel that solutions can come with pushing this to this level. But we have to overcome decades of national approaches to defense and how to find the possibilities of a European joint approach. We have a historic first mandate of the new European Commissioner for Defense and Space. And Mr. Andrius Kubilius, who will speak on the panel in just a couple of minutes, has the big role, and under no pressure, obviously, to chart out the road for European defense, not only for his mandate, but for many, many years to come. So let's hope that we make this happen as best as possible. What we say in the report, the European Union is not trying to replace NATO. Stronger Europe means stronger NATO. The European component complements and strengthens the alliance. And given the difficult environment, the ambition must be, for Europe, must be challenging but achievable, and just to create enough credibility and add to deterrence and not detract from the strong Western position of strength. Strategic awareness and strategic communication is paramount in this, and it is crucial to explain to citizens and partners that these investments that we put into European defense are vital for our own security, for global stability, and for protecting the way of life, and that it needs to be our priority. Even though we didn't choose this, we have to do that. So in the report, we emphasize the need for the European Commission to resolutely support member states in delivering and developing a strong EU warfighting capability. This means focusing on specific military capabilities that bolster European deterrence. And you all know what the priority areas are, and most of you probably read the white paper on the future of European defense. It's the priorities right there, but the report also adds a few others, like deep precision strike, ISR capabilities, space-based assets, and cyber capabilities. And given EU's track record on developing military capabilities, we should be sure to focus on fewer projects and focus our attention rather than trying to do everything at once. Everybody remembers PESCO and pooling and sharing projects. But critically, EU command and control structures need to be enhanced as soon as possible, not to basically take over from NATO, but certainly to build the military planning capability that is necessary and to conduct regular exercises that will show resolve and also add to deterrence. And while it's the member states who have to deliver the capabilities primarily, of course the Commission has a lot to offer, and its legislative powers are the key tool that we believe and write in the report that it should use. The report therefore urges to use the legislative power to impose more progress on military mobility, just to shorten the times to deliver forces where it's necessary in terms of hours, not days, but also supporting infrastructure investments. The Defense Omnibus, everybody's waiting for, that is coming out next week, will include many ways to cut red tape and unlock the potential of the defense industry in Europe. This should include, from our side, also simplifying the movement of defense articles. European countries are exporting 1/3 of their defense production within Europe, and abolishing intra-European export-import licensings, for example, will decrease prices, speed up deliveries, simplify life cycles, and actually kickstart a genuine single European market on defense, Ukraine included, which is critical. Finally, the report also calls for a review and amendment of the EU guidelines on defense procurement. Current rules simply are too slow to reflect today's needs. We need faster, more flexible processes that encourage innovation and joint procurement. That's what we want to see. Obviously, none of this is possible without adequate resources, and the report therefore is clear on the need to keep increasing defense spending and the financial framework in general for European defense. This means advocating for sustained increases in national defense budgets, aiming for the 5% of GDP, and hopefully we'll get there in 2 weeks' time for the NATO summit, which represents the combined defense spending of dual use and hardcore defense. But it also proposes redirecting EU funds and also some of the cohesion funds towards defense and dual use projects. Rearm Europe is a good start, but more needs to be done, especially on unlocking private capital to support the scale-up of European defense, and also a review on the European Investment Bank's role in all of this. Europe is stepping up. I mean, my message would be for the panel that it's not like we don't know that we don't have to do this. We know it's necessary, we know what to do, and we are on the course of doing that. And building a stronger Europe, strengthening the transatlantic alliance is the best recipe to get ready for times of great power competition that are ahead of us. This requires unwavering political will from member states, sustained investment, and crucial institutional reforms. And as I said, rearm is just a stepping stone, but the journey towards a European security actor is a marathon, not a sprint. And in Globsec, we will continue to closely follow Europe's effort to get stronger, more ready, and more resilient for the times to come. And using our deep understanding and large networks of expertise and experience, we want to assist in making sure Europe also stays in peace and can do this hard job. Thank you very much. This is where you can find our products. Enjoy the panel.
Thanks very much, Martin. I'd like to invite our panelists to take the stage. First is Andrius Kubilius, the EU's Commissioner of Defence and Space. The second one is Hanno Pevkur, Estonia's Minister of Defence. Sorin-Dan Moldovan, the State Secretary with Romania's Defence Ministry. Marcel Grisnigt, I hope I got the Dutch emphasis correct, Vice President with KNDS, and then Kari Silde, the Director of European Engagement with Helsing. Thanks very much. I'd like to start with, first of all, we will be trying to take questions during the panel. There's a microphone, and so if you have a question when we open it up to Q&A, put up your hand and the microphone will find you. Otherwise, we do have this Slido app, and so you can ask questions via the app, and it's hashtag Globsec Forum MHV. And so if you pop the things in, I can see it here on my tablet, and we'll try to address some of those questions as well. I'd like to start maybe with a slightly negative question. Europe feels in danger from Russia, but if you look at the scale of the European population, economy, defense industry, there should be no particular reason for fear. Over the last decade, SIPRI, the Stockholm Peace Research Institute, estimates that the European members of NATO have spent over $3 trillion over the last decade. Why do we have so little to show for that? And is there some systemic problem at the core of Europe that makes it unable to spend that money effectively, which is why we have tiny tank forces, small air forces, and feel threatened by a much smaller and weaker Russia? Mr. Commissioner, why don't we give that a try?
Well, thanks a lot for a very good question. It depends how we shall look now. How much we spend is one thing, but also the conclusions which you will read from other experts will be very simple, that we underspent for quite a long time in Europe. We were living with that, looking for peace dividends, that Americans will give us all the security guarantees. So that is one thing. Second, what if you will read Draghi report, our defense industry became very much fragmented. We are not using power of single market to advantage of our defense industry competitiveness, and that is why member states, again, Draghi report I will quote, were spending only 20% of their defense spending money procuring European production. All other money were going, I don't know how many trillion.
20%.
Yeah, 20%, that's Draghi report. 60% was spent for procuring American production. So, that's the situation which we have. And, I can quote other statistics. Mark Rutte is repeating permanently and very convincingly that at the moment, Russians are able, during 3 months, to produce more ammunition than all NATO member states, including United States, Great Britain, all of us in Europe, are able to produce during 1 year. So that's reality. Okay, we are improving. Back in 2023, when the war started, and when, European Union promised Ukraine 1 million ammunition shells, and it appears that we are not able to deliver, then we calculated that we are able to produce only 300,000 per year. With European Union programs like ASAP and EDIRPA, we achieved that this year we shall finish with 2 million ammunition, shells produced in Europe, so it's quite a big increase, but still we are behind. So that is why Commission and Council supported. We came out with all the programs like Rearm Europe, white paper, which really, first of all, concentrates and targets what I call material side of our defense readiness. And I will end maybe with one sentence, which again we need to understand. If to take into our thinking what recently one of the leaders of NATO military command, Admiral Van Heem, we have said about new capability targets, which now was agreed in between of NATO and member states. He said that they will be 30% bigger than the previous targets, which were agreed back in 2021. So lessons from Ukraine are taken. But they also, what he said, that the previous targets, we did not implement it also by 30%. So it's very simple arithmetic that at
jump.
Yeah. At the moment, now if you are calculating in a very simple arithmetics, at the moment we are at the level of 53% of what we need to have according to new capability targets in order to be ready for defense. And again, we need to, here, the final sentence, we need to take into account what our intelligence services are saying, that, and German intelligence services, again repeated, that they have an evidence that Putin or Kremlin is really considering plans to test Article 5 during next 3 or 5 years.
Thank you very much. Mr. Pevkur, as the country which is often seen when you look at these potential hot points that Russia would try to probe in the EU and in NATO in an attack of some form, what's your assessment of how the EU or Europe has done in defense spending, and what are your thoughts on the effort that's now underway with the white paper and with programs like SAFE and EDIP to turn that around and to more efficiently spend money and to try to unite a very fractured defense market, and what impact that has on a country like Estonia?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. It's good to be back at Globsec, and of course, I fully agree with Andrius that Europe has been not doing enough, and this is the reality. Just you mentioned 3 trillions, true, but US the same time 10 trillions. So this is the reality. Today, US is spending around 900 billion annually. Europe plus Canada around 350 billion. So the understanding what we all have to have is very clear that even when we get the result in The Hague to go to 5%, then this 5% will not go to defense only. We have all the understanding that we will not change the defense spending definition. And then that means that to go to that 5%, we will go probably to 3.5 plus 1.5 or something like that. What is under discussion and what is under discussion at the moment? But nevertheless, when I take the Estonian situation, then we say that we have to go to 5% in 5 years, because Mr. Kubilius also said 3 to 5 years is the estimation. But I'm not looking at this as of 3 to 5 years. I have to be ready in 3 to 5 days. So, and I know that the Estonian army is ready for that, to defend Estonia, to defend NATO, to defend Europe. But still, we have the collective defense. The new capability targets are good. The new regional plans are good. Now we need to make them executable. They are not at the moment. So 53%, well, overall estimation, yes. But when you go into the segments like air defense, enablers, then you see much worse numbers. Number of troops, not enough. So this is why, even when we take that, when all the European countries will go to 3.5% with the hard defense spendings, then we will see around 2 trillion of new money in next 10 years. So this is not, this 3 trillion. This is much more. This is added money. So now is the question that what we will do with that money, and the question why we don't have. So you asked also from Mr. Commissioner that why we didn't get enough defense, because we are paying a lot of salaries from this money. So today the average in NATO is around 30%, which goes to the new capabilities. In Estonia, we are investing 54 or 55% to the new capabilities. We are going to 5.4% already next year with the defense spendings. And when we take from this money 50% only to investments to the capabilities, then we will be much quicker on the level of the capability targets as many others. But that doesn't help when the others are not doing.
Right.
So the understanding has to be that, you know, we all have to do our share. So this is NATO is the club. So when you are in the club, when we agree the same rules in the club, then we have to also agree or play by these rules. So this is the point. And when we are not doing that, then we are sitting here in 5 years, scratching our heads and thinking, hey, why we didn't get so much defense in 5 years?
Yeah, pretty crucial issue. In Romania, I guess you're going to be, one of your jobs is going to be looking at that defense production ramp up. Where is Romania on building up its defense production capacity, and how useful for you are these EU programs, both in defense procurement integration and in boosting spending for your own industry?
So, first of all, in Romania, the defense industry is not in the Ministry of Defense, it's in the Ministry of Economy. Mm-hmm. But we are working because the Ministry of Defense is the beneficiary in the end. Because I totally agree with what Commissioner said in the beginning, that, and I want to stress that we understood the necessity since 2017 to allocate at least 2% of the GDP for defense, and we did that. And now we also have a political agreement to raise that to 2.5, for example. And these programs that the European Commission are doing are a good thing to develop our capabilities. For example, I believe it's late, but better later than never, to have a commissioner for defense in the European Commission. And I want to congratulate the commissioner for finalizing the safe regulation, and because we need that yesterday. As the minister said, we cannot wait 3 to 5 years to build our capabilities and capacities. We need them yesterday. The war is still there, and we understand that, at least the countries from the eastern flank, we understand that better than anyone else. It's not only a classical war, it's also a hybrid war, and also we need to understand that as well. And I believe, and I have some expectations from the NATO summit in Hague, that all the allies to understand that we need to each member state in the alliance to do its job and to allocate an amount of money which is related to the reality in the field right now. So
always a difficult argument to make, depending where you are geographically. Right? If you're Estonia, it's very pressing. If you're Portugal, a little less so.
That's true, but it's about the collective defense. It doesn't matter if you're Estonian or Romanian or Hungarian or Spanish. It's about Europe's security, our continent's security. So I don't believe we should look into this like I don't know. The eastern flank is more exposed rather the western flank. No, I don't believe that. And the Secretary General just stated a few days ago in London, if I'm correct, a quote that there is no east and west right now. So we need to understand that. And I think European countries are starting to understand that. Take a look what happened in, for example, because I was telling you about the hybrid war, which is also happening in Europe. Take a look what happened in Romania, for example, in our presidential elections last year in 2024. That was Russian interference in democratic process of a European country. And I hope that European countries are going to learn about what happened in our case, and I hope we won't see another example like that again.
Great, thanks. We've got a couple of representatives from the defense industry. I'd like to get your view on how you see what the Commissioner is working on, the EU programs. One complaint that my reporters hear an awful lot about is a lack of long-term contracts, that governments are basically calling on the industry to take the risk themselves and expand production without the long-term contracts to give you a sense of safety when you do invest. Is that changing at all? And do you look at these at the money and the efforts that the EU and NATO are making, and does that make industry feel more secure about the about ramping up production?
Let's start by the begin. And the begin, as the white paper also correctly says, is Ukraine. We need the peace in Ukraine. First step. Their peace is our peace. So our priority currently is simply delivering what we committed to Ukraine and supporting them in keeping operational available what has been delivered and supporting their industry. If you then make the switch to rearming Europe, so again, Ukraine, that should include Ukraine. And if you make a link, before I come to your contracts question, to the production capacity, let's be honest, at a macro level, and if we include the production capacity of Ukraine, which is enormous, quantitative and qualitative, at a macro level, we have enough production capacity. We are only not using it in an efficient way. And then you come to the demand side. There is still an urgent need that nations align their demand in time, in quality, to enable standardization as much as is realistically possible, but also to enable an optimized usage of the production capacity present in Europe and Ukraine. And then you can make the switch to long-term contracts, but you have to aggregate this demand side. The nations have to align and also to be willing then, related to that, to transfer technologies to other countries, again, to make an optimized usage of your available production capacity.
So there's a waste that's happening right now. There's unused or inefficiently used production capacity.
Absolutely.
Right. And you're a startup. What's the view on that issue? And as well, my understanding is that Helsing is more focused on the drone side of things. When you look at these programs that the EU is talking about, including some of the issues of air defense, artillery, that sort of thing, is there a sense that Europe is arming itself for a conflict which has significantly changed and the dangers have changed? I mean, we saw that very innovative Ukrainian attack on Russian heavy bombers. Israelis seem to have done the same thing by moving drones into Iran when they launched their attacks this morning. Should Europe be thinking differently about what it's spending its money on as well?
Thanks a lot. Indeed, we're a European scale-up, no longer a startup, but a scale-up, which I think is an important point to make because we are able to deliver capabilities at scale. We're not a small company doing R&D efforts, which goes to your question about what capabilities do we need to procure? Are we innovative enough? What I will say is we need capabilities that we can field in 1, 2, 3 years. That achieve the effect. Whether these are innovative or more traditional capabilities, doesn't matter. We need capabilities that achieve the effect. The point we are making, and I think we are seeing around Europe, is that we will not able to produce enough traditional equipment in that time frame. So to be able to have the capabilities we need to go and look at non-traditional defense industrial base. Now, I'd also like to touch upon the question that you asked earlier, which is about, do industries need a 10-year time frame to even go into business to build up production facilities? And I think that is not how we should be framing it. I mean, the demand is there, and industry also bears responsibility. And that is also the way that startups and scale-ups work. We, with our own money, develop products, have conviction that these are best in the market, and then go and sell these products. And I think this point of industry taking more responsibility is critical if we are to bridge this gap.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. Commissioner, we've heard quite a lot about inefficient use of existing capacity. How do the programs that you're pushing forward tackle that? And will that effort work? I mean, is there a lot of underutilized production capacity? Can we be doing a much better job of producing than we're doing right now?
Well, definitely there are shortcomings which we more or less know from different experts' analysis against the Draghi report. We can remember. The question is how to overcome those problems, structural problems, because at the same time we need to look how to produce what we need to produce. I agree with the question, though, that still the question is what we need to produce. Because if to learn from Ukraine, then there are a lot of questions. And I'm always raising the issue that recently United Kingdom had adopted a new strategic review on defense, where they put very simply the warfare doctrine with a very informative title, 20-40-40, which 20% of targets to be hit by heavy weapons, traditional weapons, artillery, tanks, 40% by light drones, kamikaze drones, 40% by heavy drones and missiles. So which sounds very similar to what now you can hear from Ukraine. That in Ukraine, on front lines, they are hitting 80% of targets by drones. So still we have this question mark now on to what kind of warfare we need to be ready. But second, what we need to understand that really there is, how to say, we need to be, and Globsec report here was very, very, very clear. There is some kind of, we need to take into account clear division of labor, NATO, member states, and Commission. So definitely a lot of things in defense and defense industry belongs to the decision-making in governments. What we are looking for, how we can incentivize member states to spend their national defense spending in a, how to say, more effective way, more, joint procurement, joint development. We also are looking how to incentivize member states to spend more of their money on European production. And that is where European Union Commission needs to have instruments in order to incentivize. I don't believe in ability for us to regulate how member states can spend the money. So we can incentivize. That is where significance of new program. We now are happy that safe regulation is in place. We hope that that can encourage also member states to agree very soon on EDIP program, which will really bring into new scale that experience which we got from previous programs like ASAP and EDIRPA, and also will create a lot of new instruments like CIAP, FAST, and so on and so on. So, and in addition to that, of course, then it would be very, very important for us to look into possibility to have for EDIP not only legal power in EDIP, but also financial power. Because now we have only 1.5 billion in that, in this budget, so we are looking also into next budget and so on and so on. So there are a lot of things which we are doing at the same time. And, and from one side, we're looking how we can incentivize member states to go for more of, joint procurement, which would be beneficial, first of all, for member states, and also beneficial for industry. Because for industry, it would mean that, there is a larger scale of contract, longer-term contract, perhaps, exactly. For member states also. If you are coming with larger scale contract to the industry, you can expect that the price for the same equipment will be lower. Yep. So this is one thing. Now, second, what is, again, on those our capacities. I agree absolutely that we need to learn a lot from Ukraine. A lot from Ukraine. And not only from technological point of view, how to make drone, but also how to manage the whole process. How to create some kind of what I call ecosystem, including, with different procurement dynamism and so on. That is why, for example, next week really we're coming with important package, so-called simplification in defense omnibus, where we are starting to touch upon those problems, but also, we are trying to build new platforms for our cooperation with Ukraine. We created joint task force. Now we are working with those responsible ministers who created drone army in Ukraine to create some kind of joint platform, which we call, taking the title a little bit from Ukraine, Brave Europe, where we really are looking not only how to support Ukraine, but also how to learn a lot of things from Ukrainian industries. So that is also how we can use our capacities in a much more effective way.
You mentioned financial firepower. There have been suggestions kicking around over the last months of setting up some sort of a defense development bank, a multilateral bank that would help funnel cash towards defense spending projects that would work in conjunction with like EDIP and SAFE and these other programs. Is there EU interest in moving in that direction?
Well, perhaps, because I'm always, again, repeating that what we did till now, like white paper and the Rearm Europe program, with all that financial instruments which are starting to be implemented, we did the first step. Now, from one side, we need to understand what are the demands, and then how much they cost, and then to look how we can supply. So from one side, we know more or less now, and the numbers will come perhaps in a more open public sphere, what are NATO capability targets and what we call out of that aggregated demand. But we need to have in mind also what was, perhaps in Globsec report as it was presented, the issue that we need to start to understand that perhaps really in a longer term time frame, Americans will start to shift more and more of their geopolitical attention to Indo-Pacific and to diminish their presence on the European continent. I'm talking here about not tomorrow or day after tomorrow, but years to come. And then the question is, how much it will cost for us to replace those American capabilities which are existing on the European continent and which are very crucial for us, especially in with strategic enablers. And here are some studies, again, I'm not making my conclusion, but for example, International Institute on Strategic Studies recently published a paper which calculates that for us to replace American capabilities on the European continent will cost around $1 trillion. So when we shall add all those amounts of money, perhaps we shall need really to look for additional financial resources, and then really we shall sit down to look into those new possibilities.
Great, thanks. I guess part of that American military shift to the Indo-Pacific is deploying its troops inside California, but that's a different issue. Minister Pevkur, when you these issues that come up with a fractured defense market, with countries with big defense industries, Italy, France, and others, trying to promote their own defense industries, does that make you particularly frustrated when you are a frontline country with a obviously small population, a small defense industry? Is there the sense that you want to sort of shake people and say, listen, stop promoting your own countries, we need to look at it this as a continental way? Or is this simply the way that Europe does business and it can't be changed?
Well, protectionism is something what I never liked, to be honest. Of course, when I look at our procurements at the moment and acquisitions, then yes, we are global. Of course, when we talk about European money, then we all understand also regarding the safe mechanism that it should go to European industry.
Even if that angers Washington, which feels excluded from some of these programs.
Well, at the end of the day, when I take the number of money, what I just said also during my first intervention, the amount of money is so big that the European industry will be happy, US industry will be happy, and also on the global market. So when I look at the Polish decisions, then they've decided to go with the Hanno, with the K2 tanks, and then K9 now with the Grabs, their own production. We have K9, Finns have K9 from South Korea. This is not the problem. At the end of the day, what we need is the capability. And to get these capabilities, you need to see for the quality, for the price, and for the delivery time. At the moment, the second component as a price has been actually less important, as we see. Unfortunately, we also see that the prices are going up. So the same what we got 2 years ago, we cannot get today. So anyway, I would say that, you know, when we and also when we take Europe, then we have to split the big primes like Rheinmetall from Germany, or Leonardo, or KNDS, or you know, some others, BAE, and then we have those emerging techs and you know, scale-ups already, you know, not the startups anymore, but even the startups. You know, I always say that, you know, that we need to look more at the effects. When the big primes can offer us the effects, please be my guest. I'm not against it. But as a political leader today, and also when I talk to my chief of defense, we're looking for the effects. When we are not getting the effects, how to destroy your enemy much more far away than your positions are, then we are losing. So this is why when I want to buy ATACMS, which costs which can fly 300 kilometers, but I can get it only in 2033, then this is not the result for me. I need to have something today. And when the startups or scale-ups will come up with the solutions which can deliver me solution to destroy our enemy in 300 or 500 kilometers tomorrow, then I will go for that. So this is in one hand, it's a competition, but on the other hand, of course, it is also how to keep our European industry alive. And the competition between the scale-ups and the primes will always be there, and the primes will buy the scale-ups a lot. So and in one moment maybe Helsing is the prime and Rheinmetall is not the prime. So because we are not buying so many Leopard 2A anymore.
Thanks.
So this is the point.
I saw some reactions to that on the industry side of things. What's your view on the primes and the how did you put it? The primes and the
well,
the scale.
It's good that we have the
primes,
primes and scale-ups on
Right.
the panel. So then I want to irritate them to fight each other.
By the way, we have a good cooperation in and for Ukraine, by the way. I prefer not to talk about primes and scale-ups, but about system integrators and partners. And we are a system integrator because in the end, everything needs to come together in an interconnected operational capability. So you need system integrators to integrate the capacities of others, whether it's C4I or new technologies, etc. And we are a system integrator, so we do not have this competition discussion. We work together, but in the end it has to come somewhere. Of course, I heard the remark of the K9, the K2, whatever, K9.
Both.
I think.
K9.
Both. Let's be honest. Standardization, in accordance with the American model, we will never achieve in Europe.
It's just too fractured a defense market.
Yeah, that's
national
going
interests.
back from 17 main battle tanks to 1. We will never achieve that. But I don't think it's neither necessary, but we have to stay realistic. But I think there are instruments available, because you have to start what you can do. Because in the end, it's not only about the capabilities, and standardization is not an objective itself, because in the end it has to be interoperable and preferably interchangeable, and whether it's a K9 and a Caesar or a Panzerhaubitze, that should be the objective. But it's also a question of affordability in the end. And standardization serves economy of scale, enables us to optimize the usage of our production capacity, and in the end is cheaper in logistics. Everybody, the open doors are known, but it's more affordable. So we should strive for some standardization and especially exploit the existing initiatives that are already going on between nations. And I'm talking about 3 or 4 nations that aggregate their demand, standardize their capabilities, and then you have the stars. And we should exploit these kind of examples. Take the example of Germany, who is closing a framework contract for the Leopard 2A8, to which the Netherlands are connected, other interested countries, and even the production is doing locally, and not only for the local country, but more. Those are examples which you should exploit. The Structure for European Armament Program, which is one of the initiatives, we can define projects which we can use those kind of EU instruments, but not everything can be done by the EU. The message is more exploit what is currently already going on by a couple of member nations and target specific elements to be coordinated for the EU, maybe based on lessons learned of Ukraine, maybe a flexible C2 system, or of course the drone capacity and the counter-drone capacity. Select them what you let coordinate by the EU and exploit what is already going on. And then you have the first steps, and then you come there. I'm pretty convinced.
Thanks. Kadi, there's a question for you on Slido from Aaron Gash-Burnett. You said if it takes too long, it's not what we need. How quickly can Helsing and others scale up drone production to, for example, 100,000?
In the next 2 years. So we can deliver right now. The way Helsing has developed our products is as much of the complexity as possible is in the software. So the production of the hardware is quick, it's fast, it's mass producible. So that's the benefit we bring to the table. The other thing that Minister Pevkur outlined or underlined was price. We're seeing right now that governments are needing to pay more for the capabilities than they needed before, right? So there's an inflation happening. So I think we need also companies like ours, like other scale-ups, to put pressure on everyone, on all companies, to deliver not on inflated prices, but on lower prices, because although we're getting more money into the system, as we heard also, it's not enough. It's not going all into defense, so we need to have our eye really on delivering the capabilities at the lowest possible cost. And I would also like to say that, yes, we do have an excellent cooperation with KNDS. It's never going to be one or the other. They're always going to be more traditional defense primes and scale-ups operating together, sometimes also cooperating like we are. So that's what we need to go forward.
The Commissioner talked a lot about looking at the model provided by Ukraine, which is sort of undergoing frontline experience on this. Are you looking at that as well, both in the technological arms race that they have with the Russians and in the way that they're structuring their production?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the main lesson, one of the main lessons from Ukraine is the need to adapt really, really quickly, because the innovation cycle due to Russian countermeasures is really, really fast. Now, if you need to, and that goes back to our approach of software-defined defense, if you need to, at every point, redesign, reproduce your hardware, you're never going to be able to keep pace with that change. However, if most of the complexity is in the software, which obviously you can update much, much more quickly, you're then able to keep up with that pace. And the second thing I will say really quickly, what is really making the difference in Ukraine is the ability to work extremely closely with end users and have constant feed of information about what they need, what is working, what is not working, and we need to be able to emulate that in Europe, which I think to the extent that we need is not there yet.
Great, thanks. Maybe we'll take a question or two from the floor if anybody wants to put up their hand. We've got one over here.
Good afternoon. Kurt Bassiner from Democratization Policy Council. My question is to anybody on the panel who wants to field it. We both talked about resources, but also creating the incentives, as you said, Commissioner Kubilius, for common procurement and standardization. I'm curious whether there's any serious discussion going on among member states, legislators, about EU defense bonds. This is something the Ukrainians are, they're generating resources through bonds for their defense. It's something that we did in the Second World War. It gives you both of those. It gives you a lever to get the commonality as well as resources quickly, and even tapping into capital flight from the United States, to be honest. I'm just curious whether there's discussion going on about that.
Thanks very much. Commissioner.
Well, usually I'm answering to such question very simply, My responsibility is to spend money, not to find where those money are. But more seriously, look, I'm always saying in a very simple way, what is the difference in between of defense bonds and safe loans? Safe loans, are taken by member states, and member states are issuing guarantees that they will repay. Defense bonds, everybody understands that this is bonds like it was done during pandemic, pandemic bonds. The EU is going to borrow on its own behalf, AAA rating, but EU is guaranteeing to repay those bonds by its own budget. Now, what is happening with a new generation EU facility and those money which were borrowed during pandemic? In next MFF, we need to allocate 200 billion euros, 20% of next MFF, to repayment of pandemic bonds. Are we ready to add additional 20% into the budget to repay defense bonds? Well, I would be, from my point of view, whatever, we can do whatever we want, but then we need to understand that we shall not be able to continue financing common agricultural policy. We shall not be able to continue financing cohesion funds and so on and so on. So this is much more deep question about what does it mean, those bonds. Because that is really, for time being, this is an issue, how we are going to guarantee repayment of those bonds. And if we agree that, we shall start to live with issuing bonds and then using budget only for repayment of bonds, then that's quite a big, strategic question. So that's my very, very humble answer. I am not saying that that we should be, totally against, but that demands much deeper discussion about how we can go forward.
We've got a couple of national government representatives. If you could address that.
Very briefly. So at the end of the day, for me as a government representative, there is no difference. Is it defense bond? Is it a safe instrument or something else? So we need new money. When we don't make a decision on the political level to put new money, as we did, to go from 3%, so first 3 years ago from 2% to 3.5, and now from 3.5 to 5.5, just in 1 year. So when you don't have the political decision, then it doesn't matter, is the money available there or not. So at the end of the day, as I said, when the political decision is there to put money into defense, then where the money comes from is a secondary question. Is it from the capital markets, from your own rate, what you have, or what interest you can get as a country, or you can get from the European Union, or you can get from defense bonds? Doesn't matter. The point is that it starts from the political decision to make a decision to invest more into defense. So then the financing is or the funding is the secondary question.
And in Romania?
Well, I totally agree with the minister. It doesn't matter where the money comes from. But I believe that the SAFE program, because we talked a lot about it, and it's a new program, it's a test of political maturity of the member states. Because if we will fail, then the whole feasibility of deeper defense integration will be put under question mark. So I believe and I hope that this SAFE program, it's not only a chance for us to get money and develop our capabilities, but it is also a test of political maturity. Because yes, we did have a political decision, and it's all about the political decisions in these situations. Like the European member states decided to form this position of a commissioner for defense, for example. That was a political decision. Of course, it was done due to the war and the context, geopolitical context, but it was a political decision. So I totally, fully agree with my colleague, the Minister of Defense. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
We've heard a lot about the need for unity in Europe, but there is a sense that despite the pressures of the things that I mentioned at the beginning, the Russia threat, the potential disengagement of the US, that there still seems to be fairly deep disunion. I guess the NATO countries probably in The Hague will agree to a 5% defense spending goal, but there's big dissension as to when that target should be reached. I think countries like Estonia want it as soon as 2030. The Italians are talking 2035 or perhaps even later. There's a dissension over how much of a role American defense industry should play in some of these EU spending programs. There's also differences in societies. The Spanish and the Italians want to use a lot of that money towards infrastructure, climate spending, arguing that that broadly fits the defense profile. I'm assuming that does not fit at all with what Estonia would like to see. So as you look at this, maybe from the point of view of Estonia, do you sort of despair of the fact that this is in the end 2 or 3 dozen countries with wildly differing priorities, differing sense of danger, and that from where you're sitting, you are very focused on the immediate physical threat posed by Russia, and it's difficult for you to translate that into action on the part of all the other countries that you're talking to?
Well, very briefly, first, I believe there is no point to start preparing for the war after the war. So when we do that in 10 years, then we might be too late, and investing after the war might be too late. Second point regarding the other topics than hard defense spendings. With all due respect to all the countries, of course, there is a need also for infrastructure. But this is not new money for defense. So this is just earmarking something that this is part of 5%.
Like the bridge.
Like the bridge or railways, whatever. I would be very happy to put on the border of Estonia the big sign that this forest here is under the protection. So Russian tanks cannot enter to that. Or to put on the building that this is under the UNESCO heritage protection and you cannot drop a bomb here. I would be happy to do that, but somehow I believe that the Russians do not understand that. So this is why we can talk about the environmental protection a lot. We can talk about investing to railways and say that this is the defense spending, but this doesn't help us to defend our countries.
So you're talking about hard defense spending.
So hard defense spending is something, well, first, we cannot change the defense spending definition. And I've said that many times, I will say that again. And second, when we want to have more defense, then you need to invest more. So simple is that. Of course, we see that the industry will struggle. They need to ramp up the production. They need to, most probably, also the prices will go up. But nevertheless, when we are not investing more, then we will not get more defense. So simple is that.
Commissioner, when you're dealing with member countries at these meetings which you're at, do you have a sense of frustration as well that there is a wildly differing perception of risk and of engagement on these issues, depending where a country lies geographically, what its budget deficit problems are, those kinds of issues? And as a person from the Baltics, are you able to penetrate some of these?
Well, no, there are perhaps different angles how we can look. First of all, it's very clear that the European Union during last year, even less maybe, very much changed its attitude to its own, defense readiness. Maybe, really those predictions by intelligence services, that Russia can be ready made its impact. Maybe changes in American administration made its impact. But now, really, we can see that defense is very clear priority for the whole European Union. Second, again, what we need to see as a positive thing, till now in the Council, all the member states were supporting Commission proposals both on Rearm Europe, on White Paper, and so on. So unity is here. Definitely, public opinion, emotions are, a little bit different in different regions. But I'm here, I don't want to blame different, different societies in different countries, because that is pretty natural. I remember very well 2015, 2016, when the southern countries were hit by refugee and migration crisis. And they were pleading for solidarity, for support, and so on. We were in the Baltic looking so, this is your problem, more or less. So after, till we were hit by Lukashenko, migrant crisis. So in some way, this is what is quite natural. But of course, country leaders can make a big job, in really bringing all of their societies into the same direction. Last point, what is important for us. Till now, we as Commission and what we were doing, and together with member states, we were taking care about what I call material side of European defense. How much weapons we need, how to produce, how to finance, and so on and so on. I see the need, and the title of this discussion was about the European Defense Union. I see that we shall perhaps move into discussion also about institutional side of our defense readiness. How we're organizing ourselves, when from one side Americans are slowly but perhaps will move towards Indo-Pacific, from another side Russia is keeping its aggressiveness. That will be a new topic. Yes, we are speaking about how to strengthen European NATO, European branch, or whatever how we shall call it. We're talking about European security architecture. That will come. That will bring for us also much more questions about our unity among European member states on defense, how we're doing that, how we're moving, what treaty is saying, that, member states, while implementing foreign and defense policy, needs to move to more common European defense.
Great.
That will be the question.
I think we have to wrap at this point. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the panelists for taking part in today's panel. I'm sorry we didn't have more time, but time is up. And there's a short break for lunch right now, and we'll welcome you back at the Havel stage at 14:10. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.